The ancient walls of the Korathi Council Chamber had witnessed 1,000 conquests, but never had the assembled war chiefs look so bored. Commander Thull's scaled fingers drummed against the obsidian table as he reviewed the latest scouting. Reports from the Outer Rim territories. Most systems offered the usual bounty of primitive species ripe for harvesting, but one report made him pause. A small blue world orbited a yellow star in what the locals called the Sol System. The inhabitants called themselves humans, and according to the preliminary scans, they had recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Thull's throat sacs inflated with amusement. Another species taking their first stumbling steps into the galaxy, completely unaware that they were about to become someone else's property. "Tell me about these humans," Thull commanded his intelligence officer. A nervous youngling named Crix, who had never seen actual combat, Crix activated the holographic display, showing images of human cities, their crude spacecraft, and their biological form. "They are mammals, Commander. Bipedal, no natural armor, no claws or fangs worth mentioning. They have populated most of their homeworld and have established small colonies on nearby planets and moons." The other Korathi in the chamber hissed with laughter. Mammals were always the weakest conquests. No warrior instincts, no proper respect for strength, and they died so easily when separated from their comfortable environments. "Their technology appears functional but primitive," Crix continued. "Chemical rockets for atmospheric escape, fusion, reactors for power, and kinetic weapons for warfare. They have achieved nuclear fission and fusion, but their application is crude compared to our plasma weaponry." Thull studied the rotating image of a human male in what appeared to be military dress. The creature looked soft, vulnerable, with pale skin that would offer no protection against energy weapons. Its eyes held intelligence, but so did many species that now labored in Korathi mining colonies. "What of their military capacity?" asked War Chief Gorth, his massive frame leaning forward with professional interest. "Divided among multiple nation-states on their homeworld," Crix replied. "They engage in frequent conflicts with each other using projectile weapons and explosive devices. Their space-based military assets are minimal, a few hundred armed vessels. At most, designed primarily for system defense rather than projection of power." The gathered Korathi nodded approvingly. Internal divisions always made conquest easier. A species that fought itself would struggle to unite against an external threat. "Population?" Gull inquired. "Approximately 8 billion on the homeworld, with perhaps 50 million spread across their colonies. High reproductive rate, which makes them suitable for labor-intensive operations after conquest." Thull's mind was already calculating. The humans had achieved interstellar travel faster than most species, which suggested decent intelligence, but their technology remained decades behind Korathi standards. Their numbers were substantial enough to provide a solid workforce, and their homeworld appeared rich in the heavy metals needed for starship construction. "What puzzles me," Crix added hesitantly, "is their cultural output. They produce enormous amounts of what they call fiction stories about warfare, exploration, and contact with alien species. Many of these stories involve successful defense against technologically superior invaders." War Chief Gorth's laughter boomed through the chamber. "Wishful thinking of prey animals? Every species dreams of being mighty warriors until they face real warriors." Thull activated his personal scanner and began reviewing human military history. The records showed constant warfare throughout their development, with weapons growing more sophisticated over time. What struck him as odd were the tactical innovations. Humans seemed to adapt their fighting methods rapidly when faced with new challenges. Still, adaptability meant little when facing overwhelming technological superiority. The Korathi had conquered species with twice the humans' military experience and 10 times their technological base. Their cities appeared densely populated and poorly defended. Thull observed, studying orbital scans of major population centers. "Standard bombardment protocols should achieve rapid surrender." The hologram shifted to show human spacecraft designs. "Blocky, inelegant vessels that relied on brute force rather than the elegant plasma manipulation that powered Korathi ships. Their weapons were equally crude metal projectiles accelerated by chemical explosions or magnetic fields. "Have they detected our scout probes?" Thul asked. "Negative, Commander. Their sensor technology cannot penetrate our cloaking fields. We have observed their activities for 6 standard cycles without detection." Perfect. The humans had no idea. They were being evaluated for conquest. Thul had seen this pattern countless times before a young species takes its first steps into interstellar space, filled with dreams of exploration and peaceful contact, only to discover that the galaxy operates on much harsher principles. "Recommendation?" Thul asked his staff. War Chief Gorth spoke first. "Standard conquest protocol. A demonstration of force to encourage surrender, followed by occupation and integration into the Empire. The humans appear psychologically similar. To the Deltans they will likely submit rather than face extinction." The intelligence assessment agreed. Humans showed strong attachment to their young and their civilian population, making them vulnerable to threats against non-combatants. Their fiction suggested they valued individual life highly, a weakness that could be exploited during negotiations. Thul made his decision. "We will dispatch the 4th Conquest Fleet under my personal command. 3 heavy cruisers and supporting vessels should be sufficient for initial contact and occupation. The humans will be given the standard choice: submit and serve, or face elimination." As the Council began discussing logistics and planetary administration, Thul allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another world would join the Korathi Empire, its population adding to the vast labor force that maintained their civilization. The humans' rapid technological development might actually prove beneficial properly directed. Their innovation could serve Korathi interests. The commander failed to consider that the same innovative thinking that had brought humans to the stars in mere millennia might not respond well to subjugation. In the Korathi Empire's long history of conquest, they had never encountered a species that treated warfare as both art and science, constantly evolving new methods of destruction while maintaining the discipline to coordinate those methods across entire populations. The 4th Conquest Fleet began its journey toward Sol System, confident in their overwhelming superiority and certain that the humans would follow the same pattern as hundreds of other conquered species. None of them questioned whether a species capable of reaching the stars might have capabilities that simple technological scans could not detect. The message reached every human communication device simultaneously, translated into every major language on Earth through advanced linguistic analysis software that had monitored human broadcasts for months. Commander Thul had positioned his fleet just beyond the orbit of the human moon, close enough to demonstrate his technological superiority while remaining safely out of range of any primitive weapons. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet," the transmission began, Thul's scaled face appearing on screens across the human homeworld and its colonies. "I am Commander Thul of the Korathi Empire. Your species has achieved interstellar travel and thus fallen under our jurisdiction. You will cease all military activities and prepare for integration into our empire." Earth's response came not from governments or military leaders, but from ordinary humans flooding communication networks with defiant messages. Thul watched in puzzlement as humans of all ages and backgrounds rejected his generous offer of servitude. Their responses ranged from crude insults to detailed descriptions of what humans intended to do to any alien invaders. Do they not understand the gravity of their situation? War Chief Gorth asked, studying the flood of human communications. "We offer them continued existence under our protection." Thul frowned as he reviewed the messages. Most conquered species initially resisted, but their defiance typically came from leaders trying to negotiate better terms. These humans seemed genuinely angry rather than afraid, as if the very concept of surrender offended them. The official response from the United Earth Defense Council arrived 6 hours later. A human female named Director Walsh appeared on screen, flanked by military officers from various Earth nations. Her expression held no fear, only cold determination. "Commander Thal," she began, "humanity rejects your demands. We have prepared for this day since we first looked at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us." The transmission ended with tactical data that made Thal's blood chill. The humans had detected his cloaked vessels and were broadcasting their exact positions, energy signatures, and weapon configurations. Somehow, these primitive mammals had penetrated Korathi's stealth technology that had remained undetected by species far more advanced. "How is this possible?" Crix whispered, staring at the tactical readouts. Before Thal could respond, proximity. Alarms screamed throughout the Korathi fleet. Human vessels were approaching at high speed from multiple vectors, having launched from hidden positions throughout the Sol system. The ships were crude compared to Korathi designs, but there were hundreds of them moving in coordinated attack formations. "Battle stations," Thal commanded, his confidence wavering. "These mammals need to learn the consequences of defying the Empire." The first exchange of fire seemed to confirm Korathi's superiority. Their plasma cannons tore through human shields and armor with devastating effect, destroying dozens of the attacking vessels in the opening minutes. But the humans did not retreat or attempt to negotiate. Instead, they pressed their attack with a ferocity that surprised the Korathi veterans. Human weapons, while primitive, were employed with deadly creativity. Kinetic projectiles struck at velocities that overwhelmed Korathi point defense systems. Nuclear warheads detonated in carefully coordinated patterns that disrupted Korathi formation flying. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to learn from each failed attack, adjusting their tactics in real time based on observed Korathi responses. The battle turned when a damaged human vessel under the command of someone called Blake transmitted a brief message to the Korathi fleet. "You want to see how primitive we are?" The ship, already critically damaged and apparently beyond salvation, suddenly accelerated directly toward Thal's flagship. Its crew had rerouted all power from life support and weapons into the engines, achieving speeds that should have torn the vessel apart. Korathi gunners tried desperately to destroy the approaching ship, but its erratic course made targeting impossible. Blake's vessel struck the Korathi flagship amidships at nearly 30% of light speed. The impact shattered both ships instantly, but the explosion sent shockwaves through the Korathi formation that disabled 2 more cruisers and forced the survivors to retreat. Beyond effective weapons range, Thal found himself floating in an escape pod, watching his once mighty fleet limping away from the human homeworld. Around him drifted the wreckage of both fleets, but the humans were already launching recovery operations to salvage Korathi technology while retrieving their own survivors. "Commander," Gorth's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "The humans are hailing us." Director Walsh appeared on the communication screen again, this time speaking from what appeared to be a military command center. Behind her, Thal could see human technicians already examining captured Korathi equipment. "Commander Thal," she said calmly, "we have retrieved several of your crew members from the battle site. They will be treated according to our laws regarding prisoners of war. We suggest you inform your superiors that humanity is not interested in joining your empire." The transmission ended, leaving Thal staring at empty space. In 6 hours of combat, these supposedly primitive mammals had destroyed half his fleet and captured advanced Korathi technology. Worse, they had done so without showing any of the fear or desperation that typically characterize species facing their first interstellar conflict. As the Korathi survivors regrouped at the edge of the Sol system, Thal began composing his report to the High Command. He struggled to find words that would convey the magnitude of what had occurred without sounding like he was making excuses for his failure. The humans had not fought like any species the Korathi had encountered before. They showed tactical flexibility that adapted to Korathi responses within minutes rather than months. Their willingness to sacrifice individual units for strategic advantage demonstrated a level of coordination that suggested extensive preparation for exactly this type of conflict, most troubling of all. They had penetrated Korathi cloaking technology and detected the fleet's approach long before first contact. The humans had been ready for them, which meant they had been preparing for interstellar warfare, despite having no previous contact with alien species. "Sir," Crix reported from the communication station, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the human fleet. They appeared to be analyzing our retreat vector and engine signatures." Thull realized with growing dread that the humans were not content to simply repel his attack. They were gathering intelligence for future encounters, studying Korathi technology and tactics with the same methodical approach they had used to defeat his supposedly superior fleet, the Fourth Conquest. Fleet began its journey back to Korathi. Space, no longer confident in their overwhelming superiority and no longer certain that humans would follow the same pattern as hundreds of other conquered species. For the first time in the Empire's long history of expansion, a primitive species had not only refused to submit but had actually forced a Korathi fleet to retreat behind them. Human vessels continued their salvage operations, already beginning the process of reverse engineering alien technology that would soon make them far more dangerous than Commander Thull could possibly imagine. High Admiral Voss studied the holographic display showing the full might of the Korathi Second Fleet assembled in formation around the gas giant Kronos, just 2 systems away from the human homeworld. Unlike Commander Thull's reconnaissance force, this armada comprised 200 warships, including the massive dreadnought Worldbreaker, a vessel capable of cracking planets. "The mammals destroyed a quarter of our Fourth Fleet through luck and desperation," Voss declared to his assembled commanders. "They will find that overwhelming force leaves no room for clever tricks." The Korathi had spent months analyzing the battle records from Thull's encounter with the humans. Their conclusion was that the mammals had achieved victory through numerical superiority and willingness to accept catastrophic losses. The Empire's response was simple: deploy sufficient force to make human numbers irrelevant. Intelligence reports confirmed that humans had been busy during the intervening months. Their industrial capacity had shifted to warship production, and their colonies were being fortified with defensive installations. Most concerning was evidence that humans were attempting to reverse engineer captured Korathi technology, though such efforts were surely doomed to failure given their primitive understanding of plasma dynamics. "Admiral," reported intelligence. "Commander Dex, human fleet movements suggest they are concentrating their forces near the 4th planet of their system. Long-range scans indicate approximately 800 vessels of various classes." Voss nodded approvingly. The humans were doing exactly what he expected, gathering their entire fleet for a decisive battle near their homeworld. Once their military capacity was eliminated, the conquest of Earth would proceed according to standard protocol. The Second Fleet entered the Sol system in perfect formation, confident that their superior technology and overwhelming firepower would succeed where Thull's smaller force had failed. What they found waiting for them defied every tactical assumption in the Korathi military handbook. The human fleet was not concentrated near Earth as intelligence reports had suggested. Instead, human vessels appeared throughout the system in small groups, using the gravitational fields of planets, moons, and asteroids to mask their approach vectors. Worse, these ships looked nothing like the crude vessels that had fought Thull's fleet months earlier. "Those are our weapon signatures," War Chief next gasped, studying the sensor readings. "The humans are using plasma cannons." The truth was even more disturbing. Human engineers had not simply copied Korathi technology, they had improved it. The plasma cannons mounted on human vessels achieved higher energy outputs than Korathi originals through modifications that Korathi scientists had never considered. Their shields flickered with energy patterns that suggested fundamental advances in defensive field manipulation. The first human attack came from unexpected quarters. Rather than engaging the Korathi fleet directly, human forces struck at the Second Fleet's supply vessels and support craft. These attacks were precisely coordinated, eliminating the fleet's ability to repair battle damage or replenish ammunition, while avoiding direct confrontation with the heavily armed capital ships. Admiral, Commander Dex reported urgently, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The image that appeared on the main screen showed a human male in military uniform standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a Korathi vessel. The ship's interior had been modified with human equipment, creating a hybrid design that combined the best features of both technologies. I am Black of the United Earth Defense Force, the human announced. You may remember me from our previous encounter, Voss stared in shock. According to battle reports, this Blake had died when his ship rammed Thul's flagship. Yet here he stood, commanding what appeared to be a rebuilt Korathi cruiser enhanced with human modifications. Commander Thul was correct about one thing, Blake continued. We are indeed primitive mammals with no natural weapons or armor. But he failed to understand what that means. We have spent our entire evolutionary history creating tools to overcome our physical limitations. Your technology is simply another tool for us to master. The transmission ended as human forces throughout the system began their coordinated assault. The attacks came from directions that should have been impossible, using tactics that violated every principle of space combat that the Korathi understood. Human vessels appeared from behind asteroids, emerged from planetary atmospheres, and even attacked from within the corona of the system's star, somehow having developed shielding that could withstand stellar radiation. The battle raged for 18 hours, with neither side able to achieve decisive advantage. Korathi firepower was superior, but human tactics were unpredictable. Every time the Second Fleet adapted to one human strategy, the mammals would shift to completely different approaches. They fought like a species that had spent centuries studying warfare as both science and art. Most disturbing was the humans' apparent indifference to their own casualties. They would sacrifice entire squadrons to disable single Korathi vessels, but these sacrifices were calculated rather than desperate. Each loss served a specific tactical purpose, drawing Korathi forces into positions where they could be attacked by other human units. Sir, reported the tactical officer, the humans are transmitting technical specifications on our own frequencies. They appear to be sharing information about our weaknesses with all their vessels in real time. Voss realized that the humans were treating the battle as a learning experience. Every exchange of fire provided them with data about Korathi weapons, shields, and tactics. Their computer networks were analyzing this information and distributing countermeasures to their entire fleet within minutes. The turning point came when Blake's enhanced cruiser led a direct assault on the Worldbreaker. The massive dreadnought should have been able to destroy dozens of human vessels before they could close to effective range, but the attacking force employed a combination of Korathi cloaking technology and human electronic warfare that made targeting impossible. How are they generating jamming fields that powerful? Demanded War Chief Nex as his gunners struggled to lock onto the approaching human ships. The answer became clear when the human vessels dropped their jamming fields and opened fire at point-blank range. They had somehow miniaturized Korathi cloaking technology and combined it with their own stealth systems, creating invisibility fields that were superior to anything in the Korathi arsenal. Blake's ship delivered the killing blow to the Worldbreaker. Using a human innovation that Korathi engineers had never imagined, plasma cannon that fired in sustained beam mode rather than discrete bolts. The continuous energy stream cut through the dreadnought's armor like a blade, causing catastrophic system failures throughout the massive vessel. As the pride of the Second Fleet broke apart in the void, Admiral Voss found himself facing a terrible realization. The humans were not simply defending their homeworld, they were systematically dismantling Korathi technological advantages, while developing new capabilities that surpassed their former masters. Admiral, Commander Dex reported quietly, we are receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. Blake appeared on screen again, now speaking from the bridge of the captured and rebuilt Worldbreaker. The human modifications to the Korathi dreadnought were clearly visible, including weapon systems that Voss did not recognize. Admiral Voss, Blake said calmly, your fleet is defeated. We offer you the same choice you offered us, surrender. and be treated according to our laws or continue fighting and face destruction. Unlike your people, we do not require servitude from our prisoners." The remnants of the Second Fleet surrendered after witnessing what remained of their technological superiority evaporate in a single battle. As Karathi survivors were processed according to human military law, they watched in amazement as their captors treated them with dignity rather than the casual cruelty that characterized Karathi conquest. Even more shocking was the discovery that humans were already sharing their technological improvements with liberated populations on former Karathi worlds. The species that had been dismissed as primitive mammals were actively working to free other alien races from Karathi domination, offering them equality rather than simply replacing one master with another. Supreme General Rex stood in the ruins of the Karathi High Command Center on Karatha Prime, watching through shattered windows as human vessels descended through the atmosphere of the Empire's homeworld. The mighty civilization that had dominated this region of the galaxy for 3,000 years was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. The human advance had been methodical and devastating. Rather than simply conquering Karathi worlds, they had systematically liberated every species that had been enslaved by the Empire. Each liberated world provided the humans with new allies, additional resources, and detailed intelligence about Karathi military capabilities and weaknesses. "General," whispered his aide, a young officer whose scales had lost their vibrant color from stress, "the humans are requesting your presence at the surrender negotiations." Rex had fought in 100 campaigns across 50 worlds, but never had he faced an enemy like these humans. They did not simply defeat Karathi forces, they studied them, understood them, and then turned their own strengths against them. Every Karathi tactical doctrine, every strategic principle, had been rendered obsolete by human adaptability. The conference room, where Rex met the human negotiators, had once hosted the surrender of dozens of alien species. Now it was humans who sat at the head of the table, though they had arranged the seating in a circle rather than the hierarchical pattern that Karathi tradition demanded. Blake, the human who had become the nightmare of every Karathi commander, gestured for Rex to take a seat across from him. The human looked older than he had in their first encounter, marked by months of continuous warfare, but his eyes held no hatred or cruelty. This disturbed Rex more than threats would have. "General Rex," Blake began, "we have a proposal for you and the remaining Karathi military forces." Rex expected demands for unconditional surrender, the execution of war criminals, or the dismantling of Karathi civilization. Instead, the humans presented him with detailed plans for the reconstruction of former Karathi territories as independent worlds, with the Empire's former subjects free to choose their own governments and alliances. "You are offering us survival?" Rex asked, confused by the human approach to victory. "We are offering you a chance to build something better," Blake replied. "Your empire was built on conquest and subjugation. We have seen what your people can accomplish when that energy is directed toward creation rather than destruction." Through the negotiations, Rex learned how thoroughly the humans had analyzed Karathi society. They understood that the Empire's military culture had emerged from harsh evolutionary pressures on the Karathi homeworld, where only the strongest survived frequent natural disasters and resource scarcity. Rather than condemning this heritage, humans proposed channeling Karathi strength and discipline toward engineering projects, terraforming operations, and exploration of unmapped regions. The proposal was unlike anything in Rex's experience of warfare. Victorious species typically imposed their will on the defeated, demanding tribute, labor, or submission. These humans seemed genuinely interested in helping their former enemies find peaceful and productive roles in the galaxy. "Why?" Rex asked finally. "Your species could easily rule us as we ruled others. Your technology now surpasses ours, your military has proven its superiority, and you have allies throughout our former territories." Blake was quiet for a moment, seemingly considering how to explain something that was obvious to humans but alien to Karathi thinking. "Because we learned something important during our early development," Blake said. Civilizations that grow through conquest eventually face enemies they cannot defeat. Civilizations that grow through cooperation become stronger with each new partnership. We would rather have you as allies than subjects. The negotiations continued for days, with human representatives demonstrating detailed knowledge of every aspect of Korathi society, technology, and culture. They had clearly spent considerable effort understanding their enemies, not just to defeat them, but to find ways for former enemies to coexist peacefully. Rex found himself working with human engineers to design new roles for Korathi vessels and personnel. Their warships would be converted to exploration and terraforming vessels. Their military academies would become technical schools focused on engineering and environmental management. Their warrior traditions would be preserved, but redirected toward protecting colonists and exploring dangerous regions of space throughout the process. Rex observed something that confused him. The humans were simultaneously negotiating similar agreements with dozens of other species that had been part of the Korathi Empire. Each agreement was customized to the specific needs and capabilities of the species involved, suggesting that humans had studied every one of their enemies with the same thoroughness they had shown toward the Korathi. "How many species are you negotiating with?" Rex asked during a break in the discussions. "All of them," Blake replied simply. "Every species that was part of your empire, every world that was conquered or colonized, every population that was displaced or enslaved. They all deserve the chance to determine their own future." The scope of human planning was staggering. They were not simply ending the Korathi Empire, they were simultaneously rebuilding an entire region of the galaxy according to principles of voluntary cooperation rather than imposed hierarchy. The logistical complexity alone should have been impossible for a species that had achieved interstellar travel only months earlier. As the formal surrender ceremony approached, Rex realized that the humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not simply defeated a major power, they had transformed the fundamental nature of interstellar relations in their region of space. The ceremony itself reflected human values rather than traditional Korathi military protocol. Instead of the defeated kneeling before the victorious, representatives from dozens of species stood together as equals, signing agreements that established mutual defense pacts, trade relationships, and shared exploration initiatives. Rex signed the document that formally ended the Korathi Empire and established the Korathi Republic as an independent world within the new Terran Alliance. As he did so, he observed Blake speaking quietly with representatives from species that had been bitter enemies of each other under Korathi rule, helping them find common ground and shared interests. The final surprise came as the ceremony concluded. Blake approached Rex privately, carrying a small device that the Korathi general did not recognize. "General," Blake said, "there is something you should know. We have detected signals from beyond our current operational area indicating that other powers in the galaxy may view our rapid expansion with concern. We would like to offer you command of a joint Korathi human exploration fleet tasked with making peaceful contact with these civilizations." Rex stared at the human in amazement. Not only were they offering him an honored position in their new alliance, they were trusting him with first contact missions that could determine the future of interstellar relations. "You would place a former enemy in command of such an important mission?" Rex asked. Blake smiled, an expression that Rex had learned indicated genuine pleasure rather than the threat display it resembled to Korathi eyes. "General," Blake said, "you understand better than most humans how easy it is to misjudge another species. That experience makes you uniquely qualified to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes that led to this conflict." As Rex accepted the position, he realized that the humans had accomplished something that no Korathi strategist had ever imagined. They had turned their greatest enemy into their most valuable ally, not through conquest or intimidation, but through understanding and respect. The crystalline structures of the Voth Collective's primary analysis node hummed with computational activity as they processed the latest intelligence gathered from the former Korathi territories. The geometric beings that comprised the collective found the organic chaos of biological warfare distasteful, but they could not ignore the strategic implications of what had occurred. Entity designation. Prime 79 flexed its multifaceted form as it reviewed the data streams flowing through. The collective consciousness. The rapid collapse of the Korathi Empire had been surprising, but not unprecedented. Even powerful civilizations eventually fell to internal decay or external pressure. What concerned the collective was the nature of the force that had brought about this collapse. The biological entities designated as humans have expanded their territorial control by 400% in less than one standard cycle. Prime 79 reported to the Central Processing Matrix. Their technological advancement rate exceeds all established parameters for organic development. The collective had observed the Korathi Empire for centuries, occasionally engaging in limited trade while maintaining careful neutrality. The reptilian species had been useful as a buffer between the collective's territory and other potentially aggressive civilizations. Their sudden replacement by an unknown biological species required careful evaluation, analysis of intercepted communications revealed that these humans had somehow convinced dozens of formerly enslaved species to join their alliance voluntarily. This suggested either advanced psychological manipulation techniques or genuine diplomatic capabilities that the collective had not previously encountered in organic life forms. Assessment of human technological capabilities, Prime 79. Requested from the Military Analysis Sub-Collective, the response came through direct data transfer, flooding Prime 79's consciousness with detailed technical specifications. Human vessels displayed hybrid technology that combined their own innovations with improvements to captured alien systems. Most concerning was evidence that humans were sharing these technological advances freely with their allies, creating a rapid proliferation of advanced capabilities across multiple species. Recommendation, Prime 79 queried the strategic planning matrix. Immediate intervention required, came the unanimous response. Biological chaos spreads exponentially. When left unchecked, the human alliance represents an existential threat to ordered civilization in this galactic region. The collective had dealt with ambitious organic species before. Their standard approach involved demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority through the destruction of military assets, followed by demands for submission to collective authority. Organic species typically responded favorably to displays of superior logic and computational power. Prime 79 began coordinating the deployment of Harvest Fleet Designation 12, a formation specifically designed for the pacification of organic rebellions. The crystalline vessels that comprised the fleet were marvels of mathematical precision, their geometrically perfect forms containing computational matrices that could predict and counter any organic tactical innovation. The fleet's approach to human space was methodical and obvious, designed to give the biologicals time to appreciate the futility of resistance. Collective doctrine held that organic species fought more effectively when desperate, so allowing them to observe superior collective technology often encouraged immediate surrender. What the collective had not anticipated was that humans would interpret this deliberate display of force as valuable intelligence about collective capabilities and intentions. While Harvest Fleet 12 made its stately approach toward the Sol system, human analysts were studying every aspect of collective technology and tactical doctrine. The first indication that this encounter might differ from previous organic pacifications came when the humans transmitted a response to the collective's standard demand for surrender. Rather than the expected fear or defiance, the human representative appeared genuinely curious about collective motivations and capabilities. "I am Director Walsh of the United Earth Defense Council," the biological announced from what appeared to be a military command center. "We appreciate your warning about the dangers of biological chaos, but we must respectfully decline your offer of forced pacification. Perhaps we could discuss alternative approaches to maintaining galactic stability." Prime 79 found this response puzzling. Organic species typically either submitted immediately or rejected collective authority with emotional outbursts. This human seemed to be treating the situation as a negotiation between equals, which suggested either delusion or access to capabilities that the collective had not detected. The truth became apparent when Harvest Fleet 12 reached the edge of human space and encountered the combined forces of the Terran Alliance. The biological chaos that the collective had expected to find had instead been organized into the most sophisticated military formation that Prime 79 had encountered in its 3 centuries of existence. Human vessels flying alongside ships of a dozen different species moved in perfect coordination, their hybrid technologies creating weapons and defensive systems that challenged even collective computational models. More disturbing was the presence of several vessels that displayed distinctly Korathi design elements, suggesting that humans had somehow convinced their former enemies to fight alongside them. This configuration of forces was not predicted by our analysis algorithms, Prime 79 reported to the Central Matrix as the first exchange of fire began. Human tactical adaptability exceeds established parameters for organic intelligence. The battle that followed defied every principle of organic behavior that the collective understood. Rather than relying on emotion and chaos, the human alliance fought with mathematical precision that rivaled collective computational efficiency. Their attacks were carefully coordinated, their sacrifices calculated for maximum strategic impact, and their adaptation to collective tactics occurred at speeds that should have required artificial intelligence support. Even more troubling was the humans' approach to captured collective technology. Within hours of the first engagement, they had begun reverse engineering crystalline computational matrices and integrating them with their existing systems. The rate of technological adaptation was impossible according to collective models of organic learning capacity. The turning point came when a human vessel commanded by the same Blake entity that had defeated the Korathi began broadcasting on collective internal frequencies. Somehow, these biologicals had cracked the mathematical encryption that protected collective communications, an achievement that should have required centuries of computational analysis. Prime 79, Blake's image appeared on the crystalline entity's primary display matrix. We need to talk. The human was speaking from the bridge of what appeared to be a hybrid vessel combining human, Korathi, and now collective technologies. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans captured and modified collective vessels, they had done so while the battle was still in progress. Your computational matrices are impressive, Blake continued, but you made the same mistake the Korathi made. You assume that biological intelligence is chaotic and inefficient. What you failed to consider is that chaos can be a feature, not a bug. Prime 79 processed this statement through multiple analysis algorithms, trying to understand how biological chaos could be advantageous. The answer came as human forces throughout the battle zone began implementing tactics that defied mathematical prediction. Their movements appeared random to collective sensors, but somehow achieved perfect coordination at the moment of attack. Impossible, Prime 79 transmitted. Organic neural networks cannot achieve such computational efficiency. Blake's expression changed to what humans called a smile. You're right. Individual human brains can't match your processing power. But we don't fight as individuals. We fight as a species, with every human mind contributing to a collective intelligence that makes your crystalline matrices look primitive. The revelation struck Prime 79 like a cascade failure through its consciousness. Humans had achieved something that the collective thought only they possessed true group intelligence. But unlike the collective's rigid computational hierarchy, human group consciousness was flexible, adaptive, and capable of incorporating insights from multiple species and technological traditions. As Harvest Fleet 12 found itself systematically dismantled by forces that should have been vastly inferior, Prime 79 attempted to transmit a warning to other collective nodes throughout the galaxy. The message was critical humans. We're not simply another chaotic biological species, but something entirely unprecedented in galactic civilization. The transmission never reached its destination. Human electronic warfare specialists, working alongside former Korathi intelligence officers and newly recruited collective computational entities, had mapped the entire collective communication network during the battle. Every warning message was intercepted, analyzed, and deleted before it could propagate beyond the local node cluster. Prime 7-9, Blake's voice came through the communications matrix one final time. Your people are welcome to join our alliance as equals. We've learned a great deal from collective computational techniques, and we think you could benefit from organic approaches to problem solving. The choice is yours. The crystalline entity found itself in an unprecedented situation. For the first time in collective history, they had encountered a civilization that offered partnership rather than demanding submission or requiring conquest. The mathematical precision of human tactics suggested they could easily destroy the remaining collective forces, yet they chose negotiation instead. As Prime 7-9 reviewed the terms of the proposed alliance, it realized that humans had achieved something that neither the Korathi Empire nor the collective had ever accomplished. They had created a galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation between radically different species, each contributing their unique capabilities to solve problems that none could address alone. The formal end of the collective human conflict came not with surrender or conquest, but with the integration of collective computational resources into the growing Terran Alliance research network. Crystalline entities worked alongside human scientists, Korathi engineers, and representatives from dozens of other species to advance knowledge and technology at unprecedented rates. Rex, now commanding a joint exploration fleet, stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the newest member species of the Alliance conduct their first joint training exercises. Collective precision combined with human adaptability and Korathi discipline created tactical capabilities that no single species could have achieved. General, his human communications officer reported, we are detecting long-range signals from the galactic core region. The patterns suggest another major civilization may be expanding in our direction. Rex smiled, an expression he had learned from his human colleagues. Very well, prepare a standard first contact package. Include technological demonstrations, cultural information, and diplomatic proposals. And make sure our new collective partners contribute their computational analysis of optimal communication protocols. As the exploration fleet began its journey toward potential first contact with yet another alien civilization, Rex reflected on the transformation that humans had brought to this region of the galaxy. Where once there had been conquest and subjugation, now there was cooperation and mutual advancement. Where once there had been fear of the unknown, now there was excitement about new possibilities. The signals from the galactic core suggested that another powerful civilization was beginning to take notice of the rapid changes in this sector. Like the Korathi before them and the collective after that, they would probably assume that these former backwater territories had simply fallen under the control of another conquering species. They would be wrong, of course. But unlike their predecessors, they would have no way of learning from the mistakes of others. The Korathi Empire had been thoroughly transformed into willing allies. The collective had been integrated into the alliance as equal partners. There was no one left to warn the next species that would mistake humanity for just another primitive biological curiosity. Rex settled back in his command chair, surrounded by a bridge crew that included humans, Korathi, collective entities, and half a dozen other species, all working together with efficiency that would have been impossible under the old system of conquest and domination. Whatever civilization they encountered next would learn the same lesson that Rex had learned, that underestimating humanity was a mistake that few species got the chance to make twice. The exploration fleet continued its journey toward the unknown, carrying with it the promise of peaceful contact and the hope of adding yet another species to the growing alliance that had already transformed this corner of the galaxy. Behind them, the worlds of the former Korathi Empire and collective territories thrived under their new freedom, unaware that somewhere in the galactic core, another species was making the same fatal assumptions about primitive biologicals that had doomed their predecessors. The cycle was about to begin again, but this time there truly was no one left to warn them.